A horse breaks a leg, you have to put it down, right? Wrong. Dr. Ted Vallejos next on Wyoming Chronicle. Working in small-town rural Wyoming, Dr. Ted Vallejos treats all sorts of maladies, fractures, cancer, and toothaches. Now and then, a patient loses a limb, and Vallejos replaces it with high-tech titanium prosthetics. What makes this unique is that Vallejos' patients are horses. He's one of 3 equine vets in the country who regularly uses prostheses to save the lives of horses that would otherwise have to be euthanized. This technique has saved the lives of about 100 animals, and more could be saved, Vallejos says, if more people knew about the procedure. You're about to know about it thanks to Dina Mishev's interview with Vallejos. A mild warning, we show an image during the show of an injured horse.
So, Ted, you've been a vet now for 23 years.
This is my 23rd year.
13 of those in Sheridan.
Correct.
Did you get into the profession to be a pioneer in the use of prostheses with horses?
No. I spent a lot of time with lame horses and doing a lot of orthopedic surgery, and we kind of fell into this about 10 years ago with a horse that really couldn't survive without an artificial limb, and I heard that it had been done, and the owner wanted to give it a try, so that was our first case.
And was this a horse in Sheridan?
It was.
And was it a client of yours? And
It was a rescue patient, and so it was the first one that we did, and we've made a lot of changes, a lot of improvements in the design of the leg, and it's really helped a lot of horses and sparked a lot of interest. So.
And so what, this first horse that you did, I mean, what had happened to one of its legs?
This horse had actually he was a chronic arthritic patient in actually both front legs, and one was really, really terrible, and he couldn't put any weight on it. So that's the first one we did, and we've made a lot of, I think, positive changes, and like any new procedure, you learn a lot as you go, and we keep learning all the time.
Yeah. And most of the horses that you see, including this first one, I mean, the option, if it's not amputation with a prosthetic, is the alternative death?
In most of the cases, it would be. What we're trying to get across in recent years, and in recent cases, my colleagues and I have put together probably 90 or 100 cases, is that it's a good option if the fracture or the blood supply makes the leg just hopeless, and rather than prolonging injury and then deciding to go with an artificial limb after the horse is really debilitated and lost a lot of weight and laminitic in the other foot, to doing the procedure earlier, and it's been really rewarding.
Right. Now, people break things all the time. I mean, I have a 6-inch pleat in my collarbone.
Sure.
Why is a horse breaking its legs so different to the point? I mean, historically they have been killed without even being given a shot at healing.
Sadly, when the Far Side cartoon came out, 20 years ago, that was the mindset in the public that if a horse broke its leg, you had to shoot it, and you certainly don't. We've made big progress in orthopedic implants, in the strength of the implants, in the size of the implants, the bone holding strength in the last 30 years, and certainly in the last few years, with some newer designs of some of the locking bone plates, and that have really increased the chances for the horse, better recovery systems from anesthesia, better antibiotic delivery systems. And I think that the more we as a profession learn, and the more courses that are offered, and the more people get an opportunity to fix these fractures, the better hope we can offer. The horse is certainly, a 4-legged horse is better than a 3-legged horse, but there are cases where fracture repair isn't possible, and we'll probably look at a couple of those cases later. But most often, if the horse doesn't have an adequate blood supply to the leg, if the fracture configuration is such that it's basically a bag of bones, and there's just no insufficient room to place a number of screws to fix or bridge a fracture, then some of those horses can't be repaired. The difference in a human, the biggest difference with your plate in your body and a horse is you can rest and you cannot put weight on your leg and you can lay in a hospital bed or in a wheelchair. Horses can't. They have to stand up right after surgery. They have to be able to get up and down and be a horse. Some of them we use the Anderson sling or an equivalent type of sling device to assist the horse either full-time or for parts of the day, but they have to be able to get up and get down and recover from anesthesia. If we look at the orthopedic implants that we use, and they're basically all human implants, human plates and human screws, with the exception of a couple recent designs just for horses. If we read the inserts to the packages that they come in, it says don't use them on obese patients, psychotic patients, weight-bearing patients, or uncooperative patients, and it pretty well describes a horse waking up from anesthesia. So we're taking a human modality and putting it in a flight animal, ranging from hundreds of pounds to well over 1,000 pounds, and expecting them to weight bear. So we have some challenges. We as veterinarians have some challenges in dealing with that. In addition, the lower part of the horse's leg has a pretty crummy blood supply on the front part of the leg and really nothing covering the bone except some skin and tendons. So it's not like we're putting a bone plate in your thigh where we've got a lot of muscle protection and a lot of blood supply. We're a little bit disadvantaged, and some of the horses that injure their legs, like on the racetrack, can really stretch the arteries to their leg and really get into a really compromised blood supply. So there are cases where a fracture is too devastating to fix, where the blood supply is inadequate, or if there's just infection in the leg that it can't survive. And in those cases, we treat them just like we do in people by giving them a new leg.
And so is it just fractures or leg infections or something that amputation can work for?
Yeah, certainly not limited to fractures. We probably, the majority of cases that we see are infection cases where we have a non-responsive joint infection or a bone infection in the foot or the distal limb anywhere. And those are horribly painful conditions, and sometimes we can resolve the infection with surgery and aggressive medical treatment, and sometimes we can't. And if it's a matter of giving the horse a chance at a comfortable life versus euthanizing him, we'd certainly choose life.
And how many surgeons are doing amputation and horse prosthetic?
I don't know. I think in the country there probably haven't been 10 people that have done them over the last 40 years. Just a few of us routinely do them now. A good colleague of mine in California and one in Kentucky and myself. I know a couple others have done some cases, and we would love for more veterinarians to learn to do the procedure. It's not that difficult. It just takes a really dedicated staff and a good team to make the artificial limb. And we've all done a lot more difficult surgery than removing a leg. It's not that difficult. It's just getting the public educated and the owners educated and the trainers knowing that it's an option before we just jump and throw a blue tarp on the racetrack and kill a horse. So we're really trying to educate folks.
So if an owner or a trainer does manage to find you and they have a horse with a fractured leg or a leg infection that they've tried everything they could and it's not working and they're coming to you, walk me through the process. Is every horse an automatic candidate for this surgery? No, and most of again, a four-legged horse is better off than a three-legged horse. So we would try, if we can, fix the initial problem. But again, if it's hopeless, then we would just stabilize the leg and take it to surgery. Some of those horses right away. Some of them you would give a chance to try and fix it by traditional means, and sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't, just based on the conditions that we mentioned before. So most of the horses are going to be referred by a veterinarian. Some are brought in by the owners. Some of them lose their legs. We've had several horses actually lose their legs in a fence or in a cattle guard and snap their leg off literally, and we're not. They've already done the amputation. We're just gonna clean it up and fit them for an artificial limb. So. Right. And I think you've actually brought a photo of a horse that showed up at your clinic.
Yeah, we did. This is a little horse from last year, and just a few-month-old filly that was running out in a pasture with her mom and a bunch of mares and babies in Texas, and this is how the owners found them. And the forelock had actually snapped its leg off at the fetlock joint and left the leg in a fence and had compromised the blood supply to this part of the cannon bone. So there was no choice. She had done her amputation, and we just removed her leg here and gave her a new stump, and she's fine and did very well for us. So.
Okay. And is this an example of kind of what she got?
This is actually one of our earlier designs of an artificial limb. Some of the premise is basically the same. They clamp on and off just like a ski boot. They're custom made for each horse. And just like in humans, they're made by Hanger Prosthetics in our practice, one of the biggest human prosthetic makers in the country. And one of the prosthetists in our part of the world took an interest in helping us with this years ago. But basically they're molded to each leg and they clamp on and off just like a ski boot. The horse wears a wool sock just like you would wear a wool sock if you had a fake leg. Mm-hmm. And just like you change your sock, you change the horse's wool sock and put it back on and just clamp it on. This particular one, we actually had put a horseshoe on the bottom. We don't do that anymore. We've actually been using a much lighter weight titanium post with a foot plate, and it allows the horses to just break over a bit easier and pivot a little bit easier. So this was actually one of the earlier ones, and it's the only one I had available to show you. All of the rest of them are on horses right now. So we've gone with a lighter weight titanium design, and it works out really well. It takes just a few minutes to change it. The horses tolerate it very well, and they're just glad to have something to stand on. So.
Now you said this is one of the earlier designs, and you've modified them over the years.
Right.
You've been doing this procedure now for
about 10 years
or so?
Yes.
What are some of the other things that you've changed as you've done more of them and seen more results?
If we looked at some of the earlier cases, a lot of the horses, it was just truly a salvage procedure. They had been chronic pain patients for many, many months to years. Some of them had already had other conditions on the opposite foot, such as laminitis, which is a huge concern, which led to Barbaro's demise. Some of the horses have just had chronic disease issues that we've had to deal with, and some of the horses initially didn't do well with some of the placement of the pins that we use in the cannon bone, for instance. So as we've gotten a little bit more familiar with what we're up against, it's not just removing the leg and making a fake one, dealing with some of these chronic pain patients. We're doing some things just to manage their pain, recovering all of them from anesthesia in a sling system till they're up on their feet. I've been using some large pins in the horse's leg, which allows them to weight bear immediately after surgery, and then they're not loading the stump by placing 2 large pins in the leg and putting it in a cast. The weight of the horse is transferred to the pins and then to the cast to the ground, where the stump doesn't load or put any weight on it. If you lost your leg at the knee and had to walk on your knee right after surgery, you'd bust your knee and break your incision and have a hard time. With the transfixation cast, that allows the horse to weight bear and have an opportunity for that stump to heal. So we've just presented about 34 cases for publication that we've had very good results getting a stump to heal and getting the horses to return badly. If you lost your leg from whatever cause, IED in Afghanistan or diabetes, you would not be using that leg and expect to load for several months, and it would heal and your leg would undergo changes. It would shrink down and your stump would get bigger. And in the course of that first year, you would be given several different artificial limbs as your leg changed. That's not the case in the horse because, again, we don't have much musculature in the lower leg. Mm-hmm. So these horses can get in an artificial limb pretty quick in about 6 to 8 weeks, and we get them back to walking on it. So it's really neat when everything works out, and we turn them out to pasture and treat them like a horse.
And I think you have another photo of a horse that's doing
Sure.
a little better than
this
the one we saw before.
Yeah, this is a little horse that we did last year, and this is a hind leg. And he actually lost his leg. He had a terrible infection in his joint and in a tendon sheath behind, and he had no chance of using the leg, and it was just becoming a flail limb and miserable pain. So we did take his leg off at the mid-cannon bone as well, and he's in one of the newer titanium legs. And this horse is out on pasture. He's completely sound. He's off pain medications in this photo, and I believe he was about 45 to 60 days after surgery. So we just turned him out and let him be a horse. If it were you, you'd still be in the hospital in a wheelchair undergoing physical therapy, but they need to be a horse. They need to be out and about and get along.
And how was he when he came to you?
He was non-weight bearing. He had been treated for this leg infection for a long time, and did quite well for us.
Do you have any favorites from over the years, or success stories that really had the odds against them that succeeded?
I would say all of these horses have the odds against them, and they don't. Unfortunately, we're not the first place they've been, so most of them have been referred by other hospitals and just as a salvage procedure. So every horse has a story. Every owner has, a different story. We've saved horses for kids as pets. We collectively, my colleagues and I that do this have saved horses for breeding stallions. I've removed legs on pregnant mares just to have them deliver babies a few months later and breed them back and send them home pregnant again. So I don't think that I have a favorite.
Okay. How many of these have you done in the total?
I don't know, a couple dozen right now that I've done myself. And like I said, Dr. Grant and I and Dr. Hawkins here at our clinic in Sheridan, we just have presented 34 cases using a technique that we've come up with just to get a better closure on this stump, and it's worked out real well for us. So that's in the last few years that we've done. And
you mentioned you have some thoroughbreds and then families. Is it the majority of horses that come to you, ones that could go on to make quite a bit of money breeding, or are most of them family pets?
In our practice, we have been overrepresented by just family pets. Probably make up about a third of the cases. The rest are breeding animals. We don't expect these horses to be ridden. We don't encourage people to ride them at all, just because they can't feel where they're putting the leg, and we don't want it to get stuck in a hole and hurt the rider. But they can be treated like any other horse otherwise and turned out on pasture. But mostly breeding animals would be the biggest caseload.
And so a good end result from an amputation is that a horse goes on to lead a normal life, living the normal number of years.
Right. I know my colleague Dr. Redden in Kentucky did a mare about 17 years ago, I believe, and to my knowledge that mare is still around, or it was last we spoke, and she was turned out and was the boss mare in a herd of horses in Kentucky, so they can live a long time, and we expect the artificial limbs themselves to last years. They can break straps and need the foot plate replaced, but they're pretty hardy devices. They're made of carbon graphite and titanium. So,
now, when you first called Hanger and were like, I want to put a fake leg on a horse, I mean, what were they like? You're crazy?
No, they said, why not? Why not? And I just, the more I've gotten involved with this and learned a lot more about the human side of, how people can do with them. It's pretty inspiring to see, guys come back from Iraq and Afghanistan with artificial limbs, and a lot of them return to normal lives. And we started giving horses the same opportunity and coming up with good devices and better surgeries to get a primary closure on their stump. And when you see one of these horses that comes in totally not using their leg, some cases, I remember one mare I did, she had not walked for 7 years and had delivered 5 foals and would lay down to nurse these foals. To see those horses walk immediately after surgery, it's pretty cool. So we just, if you give a horse the chance to heal, they're amazing. They're truly amazing, and we expect them to be out on pasture in 45 days after losing a leg, and we would never expect that of a person. So it's really remarkable what they can do if we just give them the chance.
Right. Now, have there been any horses that have come to you that you've looked at and you're like, I'd love to be able to do something, but they are not a candidate for this surgery? Sure.
Not every horse is a candidate. Not every horse does well. Overall, we're about 70% of the horses, 65 to 70% of the ones that we've done end up being long-term survivors. But certainly some horses are not. If their opposite limb has totally failed already, which was the case with Barbaro, if there's just other anesthetic concerns or other medical conditions that just would really make the horse not a good candidate, or if there's financial constraints, we don't want anyone to go broke or mortgage their house to pay for an artificial limb on a horse. That's not our decision. That's not our place. But we certainly don't want to have anyone go through a hardship. But the human-animal bond is something that is very big and very strong, and we're there to respect it.
And I would imagine, I mean, this isn't just a life-changing event for the horse, it's for the owners as well. I mean, this changing the sock every day. I mean,
right.
Do you kind of vet the owners
we do.
as well?
We have
to make sure
thorough discussions with the owners and handlers and people who will be, dealing with this. And some owners are very involved with the horses. Some of them have, caretakers take care of the horses. But it's an every day to every other day 5-minute routine. Some people have no problem doing that. Some people will, give their dog or cat special attention and, put eye drops in their dog 3 or 4 times a day, or deal with a diabetic cat. So it's a special needs horse. Every day or two, depending on where the horse is going to live and climate issues as far as sweating and temperature, they might need their leg changed every day or every other day. So, but it takes just a few minutes. It's a pretty simple thing to do, and most people are very, very readily adapt to managing the horse, and the horses are grateful.
And I mean, is it something that owners generally have to kind of fight with the horses to get this on them, or something the horses come to accept and they're holding their leg out?
Right.
Or?
By the time the horses leave our hospital, we really want it very owner friendly. The horses after, especially the back leg horses, after they've been changed a few times, most of them just stand there, let us change it. Often they'll let us bathe their leg and dry it with a hairdryer, and they're really pretty cool about it. Well, they at least clean it up and make it smell better, and put their leg back on. The front leg cases, sometimes the horses will get a little anxious on that, and as long as we hold the leg up and change the sock, give them some support, most of them are really, really good about it. So when they go home, we want them user-friendly. It clamps on like a ski boot, so just as quick as you could change your sock and put a ski boot on is really all it takes in most of the cases.
And so how much does a prosthetic cost?
The company has been charging the owners in recent years between $4,000 and $5,000 for the leg itself, and the surgery itself. We've been around $12,000 for the last several years, and that includes the surgery and keeping the horse in our hospital for 2 months. So about half that is the surgery fee. The rest is the aftercare for 2 months for the cast changes under anesthesia and just the daily medications and so forth. So it's a lot of expense, but depending on the value of the horse, whether it's breeding value or sentimental value, it's up to the owner.
You mentioned earlier that one of the reasons that there aren't more vets doing this is that the word just isn't out there yet. A little bit over a year ago, a book came out about a Hurricane Katrina rescue pony,
Sure.
Molly.
Yeah.
And since it's been about a year, I'm wondering if you've seen have you seen that people are more aware of?
I think they are. We have been on television a bit about this over the years and in a lot of publications, and I think the veterinarians out there are saying, hey, this is an option, and there's somebody they heard about in some hospital that might have this as an option, and Molly, the Katrina pony, God bless her for being a great little pony, and her owners for really being committed, and I commend Dr. Moore and his group that did the surgery after Katrina. So she's brought a lot of attention to it, and we've only done just a couple of ponies. Most of ours have been horses, so we've been challenged by the increased body size. But just any animals that are out there that can increase public awareness that we don't necessarily need to euthanize these animals is a good thing.
And that first picture that you showed, you don't need to hold it up again, but what was the option for that horse if amputation didn't work?
Yeah, there's no option in a case like that where the leg is gone. There's no option other than euthanasia.
And have you noticed there's just the three of you that are regularly doing this surgery in the country, are you getting any interest from people coming out of vet school now, interested in interning with you?
Yeah.
Or?
Yes, we have 3 interns in our hospital right now, and we get inquiries from all over the world. I just got one today from England on a vet student that's wanting to do some reporting on it. There's a lot of interest in Europe right now. So I just think the world's getting out. The internet's making it pretty readily available. So it's in certain corners of the world, it's looked at as once a pretty radical procedure, but it's really simple. We've got thousands of guys, again, from Afghanistan and Iraq with these, and it's not that difficult to do.
Well, thanks so much for spending your time with us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
The audience won't ever have to use these services
Sure.
of yours, but it's good to know that they're out there and that the choices are expanding.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Those of you who watch the occasional accident in big races like the Preakness or the Kentucky Derby know that when horses are injured, they are often euthanized right then or die later of various infections and problems that arise from an injured leg. Someday soon, one would think, this technique might save a life at the racetrack. When Dina Mishev suggested this interview, it didn't fit into the easy categories of politics or public affairs or even the arts subjects that we occasionally cover. It was just interesting. Take a look at the past season on Wyoming Chronicle. I think you'll find there's a wide range of interesting subjects. You can do that at wyomingpbs.org. And tune in at this time every week. Make us a habit. The Wyoming Chronicle doesn't end when this half hour does. It continues on our website, wyomingpbs.org, where with your help, we'll begin an ongoing dialogue around the topics we discuss on the air. Share your experiences and tell us what you think. And while you're at it, throw some ideas at us for future topics and guests.